Hello and welcome to Real Menopause Talk. My guest today is Dr. Nichola Conlon. Preventing or even reversing the signs of aging sounds too good to be true, right? Well, one of the most prevalent symptoms of menopause that I come across is losing yourself and feeling generally lackluster, as well as feeling older almost overnight. Nichola explains how NAD+, or specifically Nuchido Time Plus, can bring your spark back. How during menopause we can regain our energy and cognitive clarity. She also gives her perspective on menopause as a younger woman, which is food for thought for the generation behind us. We met up so I could learn all about it. Nichola, lovely to meet you today. Thank you for joining me.
No problem. Thanks for having me, Hattie.
First of all, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and what you're doing at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a scientist, and I actually specialize in the biology of aging. So why do we actually age at a cellular level? And what is it that's going on that, within our bodies that causes us to essentially fall apart as we get older and become sicker and experience all the sort of signs and symptoms that we generally associate with aging. So I'm really all about looking at understanding what is going on within our bodies to cause the sort of outward symptoms that we generally experience as we get older. My background is that I worked in drug development. So I actually worked developing drugs that would slow our rate of aging, which sounds pretty crazy for anybody that hasn't been following this field. If you hear me out, there's a lot of evidence that actually you can slow and even reverse cellular aging. And the reason that this is a really hot topic of research, especially within the drugs world, is because aging is our biggest risk factor for many of the diseases that they are trying to develop drugs against. So if you think of cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's, the biggest risk factor for all of these things is actually your age. And if you can target one of the root causes, which is aging, then there's a hope that we can actually slow down multiple diseases in one go. So that's kind of the sort of thinking behind that. Now, I don't work in the world of pharma anymore, in the world of drug development. I actually left that and I founded my own company, which is called Nuchido. And what we do is we look at how can we translate all this amazing science that's demonstrating that you can slow and reverse aging, but rather than go down the drug development route, how can we get this to products and services that people can benefit from now? Because drug development takes a long time. So what we focus on is bringing this incredible science into forms such as supplements and topicals. Now, those areas do have a little bit of a bad name when it comes to aging or anti-aging. And that's what we're looking to change. We're bringing out products that actually have really good science behind them and really good testing behind them, as opposed to some of the sort of snake oil things that have been available previously. So that's just a really quick overview of where I've come from. I hope that's helpful.
That's terrific. And I have so many questions for you. But starting off with, you're not in menopause or perimenopause yet. How do you feel about the prospect of going towards menopause?
I have to admit, until I started to be involved in the world of aging research, it wasn't really something that had ever crossed my mind, as a woman, which I find quite scary. Because, obviously members of my family, my mother, people like that have gone through this whole process and I've almost been oblivious to it. But now that I look back, I can see that, there were issues surrounding the female members of my family who'd experienced this and they didn't have a great time. And for me, I come from a good position in that I've got the scientific background to be able to understand what is actually going on. And I've done a lot of research into this area since I entered the field of aging science. And I feel a lot more armed and prepared than I'm sure other members of my family previously would have felt. So for me, I don't find it a scary thing because I know there are things that can be done to help with symptoms. And I kind of know what to look out for and what might be associated with hormonal changes that other people might not recognize. So I feel quite empowered. And I think that's purely because of the job I do and the research that I'm exposed to. But I really understand how there'll be many people that will not feel like that. And I think I'm in a bit of a unique position.
How do you think your friends outside of the medical world, how do you think they feel?
I think that they feel like it's just this thing that happens. There's nothing you can do about it. It's not very nice. It's, not going to be a great period of their lives, and it's a hurdle they've got to get over. I think that's the general feeling that they have. I don't think they really understand what exactly is going on, apart from, hormones are changing. I think that they have a lot of symptoms that they don't necessarily associate with that it is part of the menopause. And yeah, I think generally, a negative view because they have a lack of information and a lack of understanding about the subject.
That's really interesting because not only are we talking to perimenopausal and postmenopausal women on the podcast, but also to the younger generation coming up behind us. And we want to make sure that there's as much information out there as possible. So it's not something to be scared of. It's just another part of the female health timeline. How did Nichola come to be?
So it came about because of my frustrations with the world of drug development. There's some amazing science out there that could really benefit people, but it just doesn't get out of the labs. It doesn't get out of the companies. And there's two reasons for that. The first is that the drug development process takes an awful long time. You're looking at about 15 years on average to get anything from its first inception right the way through to being on a doctor's prescription list, which is a huge amount of time. Mm-hmm. Yet there are a lot of things that people can actually be taking and using and doing now that don't have to be drugs. So one of the things that I would be exposed to is a lot of the things we were testing in the lab weren't actually what we would classify as drug molecules. There were things that were safe and efficacious to be used in supplements. But because a drugs company couldn't own and patent those molecules, they simply weren't interested in them for commercial reasons. So I was really frustrated thinking, well, there's this great science. There's actually molecules that people could be using or productizing now as supplements, but nobody knows about it because everyone's going after drugs. So that is how Nichola came about. It was all about how could we take the scientific credibility, the latest scientific information, but bring it into a different market. And that is exactly what we do.
I like to think of myself as a tiny bit of a geek when it comes to supplements. I'm a PT in the other half of my life, and I'm very interested in what supplements can or are supposed to be able to do for somebody. I've never heard of, is it NAD or NAD plus or NAD?
It goes by various names, but it's NAD or NAD plus. People tend to refer to it as. And I have to be honest, I'm not surprised at all that you haven't heard of it. So in the UK, it's relatively unknown still. It's starting to become recognized. However, the major markets for this is the States. In the US, people are a lot more familiar with this. But basically, NAD, it's a molecule that's literally found in every single cell in your body. When you're young, you have really high levels of NAD in your cells, but as you get older, the levels really, really plummet. It's estimated that your NAD levels drop by about 50% every 20 years, which is quite worrying because what NAD does in the body is two main things. The first is that it is very important, in fact, critical to energy production. So within your cells, you have these little almost energy powerhouses called mitochondria, and they convert your food into the energy that you need to be alive and do all your bodily functions. And they absolutely need NAD as part of the cycle that creates this energy. Without NAD, you would literally be dead in 30 seconds because you couldn't produce the energy that the body needs. The other thing that NAD is really important for, which is really associated with aging is that NAD switches on cellular maintenance and repair enzymes. So every day our cells are exposed to a lot of damage. And it's really, really important that our cells keep on top of it and keep things repaired and fixed and maintained. And NAD is almost like a coordinator of all this. So again, as you get older, your NAD levels are halving every 20 years. All of that repair and maintenance is actually getting turned down. You get an accumulation of damage in your cells. And this damage, shows up as the signs and symptoms that we recognize as aging. So that's a very quick 101 on NAD biology lesson.
It's fascinating because that sounds as though it could increase sports performance phenomenally for your average gym goer to an elite athlete. And then you have, as you mentioned earlier, the prevention of diseases that are related to aging. I'm going to assume that there are going to be physical beauty benefits as well. If it's rejuvenating your skin and all of your cells on a cellular level, then that's going to affect the quality of your skin and aging. So does it do all of these things? And why don't we know about it more?
Yes. So the key thing about NAD is it almost sounds a little bit too good to be true, because you're like, well, it's involved in energy, it's involved in repair, it's involved in, mental function and all of these different things. But then it's not really surprising that it has this many benefits, because it is so fundamental to the physiology of every single cell in our body. So it's not like this is just, say, something that's found in your skin, or it's something that's found in your brain. It is literally in every single cell, which is why when its levels decline as we get older, we really do feel the impacts across every single part of our body. And when you're talking about benefits, there are hundreds, if not thousands now, of peer-reviewed papers demonstrating what the benefits of restoring NAD are across the body. And this ranges from everything from the superficial, skin, hair, and nail quality, all the way through to reversing multiple diseases, such as all the metabolic diseases like diabetes, obesity, fatty liver disease, then a huge impact on neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. NAD is involved in the biology of all of these, and actually restoring NAD levels has been shown to have a huge beneficial impact on all of these areas of biology. So you can see why it's becoming such an incredibly important and talked about topic. Although it's just filtering through to the UK, in the US, this has been, very well known for a while amongst consumers. But aside from consumers in the scientific community, this is something that we have been researching for, 10 years plus. This is not a new thing. This is just how long it takes to get science out of the lab, which is what frustrates me so much.
How specifically does Nichido support your perimenopausal to menopausal woman?
So Nichido, our supplement Nichido Time Plus, has basically been designed to elevate NAD levels in the cells and in the body. So we've done human clinical studies to demonstrate that it actually does do what we say it does and elevate NAD, which many supplements don't actually do any human trials. But by doing this, originally, I have to be honest, we weren't looking at menopause specifically. We were looking at general aging, or what we would refer to as health span. So the number of years that you live in good health and not suffering from frailty and other age-related illnesses. However, what we found was that a lot of our customers, female customers, were actually getting in touch with us and saying, do you know what? This has massively helped with my perimenopause and menopause symptoms. And the specific things that they kept pointing out time and time again were energy. So going from having a complete feeling of like, I just can't be bothered to do anything, to having a much more of a get up and go and like, what we're going to do today, that kind of just like energy to just want to get on with life is how they have sort of described it. The other thing was the brain fog. People, the words people were using in their emails to us were like a cloud had been lifted. like they didn't realize how bad it was until it wasn't there anymore. And, people saying how much it benefited in terms of the productivity. One lady even went on to become an investor in the company because she was like, it's actually changed my life. So, it was incredibly positive to have all of these people getting in touch with us when it wasn't something we'd originally set out to do. We were just looking at aging in general and cellular health. So off the back of that, we are actually going to be doing a trial. So we want some real human data, hard data, not just people's anecdotal evidence, to show what it's actually doing. So we're teaming up with a company called Glycanage. And what they do is they measure something called biological age. Now, we're all really familiar with something called chronological age, which is just how old we are. So that's how many candles on the birthday cake. But really, that has no reflection on actually how old you really are inside. And this is what we refer to as our biological age. It's how fast our cells are actually aging. And there's actually a huge discrepancy for many people between what their chronological age is and what their biological age actually is. And you can see this, you'll have, say, a 40-year-old, and some 40-year-olds will look a lot older and they'll have a lot more health problems, and their biological age may actually be 50, yet you can have another 40-year-old who is, in great health, looks really young, and actually their biological age is something more closer to a 20-year-old. And this is your biological age, and it's a much more important reflection. So what this company did was they actually looked at what perimenopause and menopause actually does to your biological age. And they found some quite shocking results, actually. So during perimenopause, they had a group of women, they induced perimenopause artificially, and they found that their biological age actually increased by 9 years in just 6 months, which is huge. The good news is you can reverse it. So it's not all bad, but, really striking to see that there is such an impact on a woman's rate of aging when they have this transition of this hormonal transition throughout their lives. And they demonstrated that with things like HRT, you could actually bring this number back down and get a woman's rate of aging back in check and back where it should be. And it's thought this is one of the reasons why there are many of the symptoms of menopause, is because the drop in estrogen is playing havoc with the cellular repair systems and energy systems, which is causing a lot of damage, inflammation, etc., which is then causing the symptoms. So basically, we're teaming up with that company, and we're actually going to take a group of women that are already in menopause. We're going to measure the biological age. We're going to look at increasing their NAD levels with Nichola Time Plus. And then we're going to remeasure, and hopefully we will see that we've actually managed to reverse some of this biological aging that they've actually experienced during the menopause, and then track how that actually affects their symptoms and how they're feeling and their well-being.
That sounds fascinating. And sign me up if you need extra guinea pigs. I'm in. Do you know how estrogen dominance would be affected in that respect? There's a lot of talk about the drop in estrogen during perimenopause, but less so about estrogen dominance, which can have some similar effects, some similar symptoms, but also additional symptoms, which can be just as difficult to manage sometimes.
Yeah, and I think the main links between estrogen and aging, which is ultimately what I'm an expert in, is the decline in estrogen. And depending on what levels of estrogen a woman had or how they responded to that prior to menopause, can make the symptoms lesser or worse when they do start to experience that estrogen decline. But the way it's linked, especially in terms of aging, is actually estrogen isn't just a sex hormone. This is what we're always taught. Estrogen's the female hormone, blah blah blah. But it actually controls a whole host of different cellular functions. You've got everything from your muscle mass to your bone density to your immune system. Estrogen's got receptors all over the body, not just on the ovaries and in the more common places we associate hormones with. So when this decline happens, and obviously different women are affected differently by this, but what you tend to find is that women will develop chronic low-level inflammation. This is actually quite damaging in terms of the health of the cells and the biological age of the cells. And yeah, it's all linked. You've got your inflammation, you've got your mitochondrial dysfunction that begins to happen, and it's all about looking with the symptoms about how we actually manage some of these root causes and be able to address the underlying cell biology to be able to have more of an effect on the overt symptoms that people are actually experiencing.
That's extraordinary. Very exciting. And something that I feel we will be hearing a lot more of.
Yeah, I think we will be. Now, I think as far as I have seen in the aging field, aging and the research that's being done has been, it hasn't been focused on menopause. However, in the last couple of years, actually, it has really been recognized that for 50% of the human population, a major cause of aging is menopause. Therefore, this is something that really needs to be addressed. This is something that we really need to understand what is going on in the body. We've got huge issues with understanding a woman's physiology, because traditionally women were never included in clinical trials, which is crazy. And, that doesn't happen so much anymore, but it's really being recognized that women and their hormones and their, specific physiology really needs to be looked into. And that is exactly what is happening. So I'm pleased to report.
Yeah, I'm really glad to hear that. I mean, sports-wise, health-wise, so many studies have been conducted on college-age men. But if that's changing, that is great news. What are your key pillars for looking after yourself at the moment, and as you... I don't want to use the word age now. Age has such negative associations as well, when it really shouldn't. It's actually a privilege to age.
That's something I totally appreciate. My world is talking about aging, and I am always talking about the bad side of aging, because generally that's what we're trying to conquer. But, what we're looking for is health span. It's being able to have that life experience and be that person you've become, but not lose your health and lose your strength and your independence as you progress through that life, which is traditionally what we just expect to happen. But what all the science is showing is that doesn't have to happen. There is no reason that we can't continue being healthy and independent and strong, and being able to have a happy and fulfilled life well into our older years. And that's exciting.
That is really exciting, and something I very much hope for. I wish to get older. I don't wish to decline. So what would be your key pillars for looking after your health?
Right. So I think when anyone talks to me, they always think I'm going to come out with some sort of magical pills and potions that we can all take to, age backwards. However, it is really some of the key things that you hear time and time again: exercise, sleep, nutrition. They are all so important to actually age well and maintain health. And if you're not getting those things right, there's kind of no point doing all the expensive supplements and things like that. Diet alone. So, I've looked at every different element of it. I've gone right through from the drug side, which are, people's perception of a drug is that it must do something really strong in the body, to the supplements, to the nutrition. But actually the body has no idea what is a drug, what is a supplement, and what is a nutrient coming out an apple that you just ate. It doesn't know. These molecules, as far as the body can see, are just molecules. It's our regulatory systems that classify them into different categories. And there are things that you can eat in an apple that are just as powerful as any drug that you can ever take. So I think, really getting nutrition right is a given. I personally do a lot of exercise. I find, for women, maintaining muscle mass by doing resistance training is incredibly important as you get older. There are studies that resistance training in older people actually increases their NAD levels as well. It actually increases an enzyme in your cells that actually makes NAD. So exercise is a great one. Another thing that I'm really passionate about is actually tracking my biomarkers. A lot of people, unfortunately, will go to their doctor and have their bloods done when they feel like crap. There's something gone wrong and they don't feel very good. And that's when they turn up at the doctor. The doctor takes the blood and goes, the levels look about normal. And you're like, well, I feel terrible. And what I'm a big advocate of is actually getting people to track their bloods regularly when they're feeling good. Because if you do that, then you can actually understand what's normal for you. Because, everybody is an individual. And this goes for everything from hormones all the way through to levels of vitamins, nutrients and things. And if you know what is normal for your levels when you're feeling good, that means, firstly, if you're tracking it, if something starts to go up or down, you can spot it very, very quickly and address it before it ever becomes an issue where you're feeling poorly. But the other thing is, it means that, you can say to your doctor, I appreciate that you think that I'm in the normal range. However, if you look, I've been tracking my blood for 6 years and this is not normal for me. Like, this is what my normal levels are. Therefore, something is happening here and we need to investigate it further. So I'm a very big believer of tracking blood biomarkers for health to be able to spot when things aren't quite right. And I'd say they were probably my top takeaways.
Would you be able to get that done at your GP?
It depends on your GP in the area you live in. Some GPs will do it. Others will just say, well, no, if you're not sick, we can't be paying money to do this. I personally don't use my GP. I use a company called Thriver. They actually do an at-home blood testing kit, and I find that really great. You do like a little finger prick blood test and you drip the blood in the tube and it's really easy and you send it away, and I do that every 6 months. If you can know, well, prior to perimenopause, this is, what my levels of hormones were, then well, actually, this has really dropped, or this is normal for me. I'm normally low estrogen. It's being able to recognize that and spot the changes, because unfortunately we're compared to the general population, and that's not a great way to do it. I appreciate why they do that, but as medicine and biology advances, things will become personalized. It's just not quite there yet, but people can do it themselves.
Where can people find Nichido Time Plus?
So they can go to our website, which is nichido.com, which is spelled Nuchido. The word is actually, it's sort of a Japanese translation of path to long life, which is where the name comes from. Some people usually say that's an unusual name. But yeah, go on our website and there's a lot of information on there. And also our Instagram at Nichido. We tend to put a lot of educational content on there, things that are really just trying to get general people to understand the biology behind why we age. And also we do work with practitioners as well. We have a partner portal which is dedicated to educating clinics and practitioners, functional medicine doctors about the benefits of NAD. So if any of your listeners are interested in that, they can definitely get in touch.
Nichola, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure to meet you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Meet you.
Take care.
Bye.
Nichola has very generously offered all our listeners a discount on Nichido Time Plus. Use code RMT10 at the checkout and go to nichido.co.uk. You can also follow her at Nichido on Instagram or at Dr. Nichola Conlon. Follow us on the podcast apps. Click subscribe and remember to leave a review. You can also sign up to the newsletter on the website so you never miss an episode. Spread the word, as the more people that hear about this, the more they listen, the more we can normalise this life transition. Thank you for listening. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.